moving right along then. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is so great to have everybody here. We have had already, I think, this morning a very illuminating discussion around digital transformation. And now what we're going to get to do is something a little fun. We're going to ground that conversation in cities, bring it a little more local. And why do we love to talk about cities? Well, because for many of us, we live in cities. We raise families in cities. We work in cities. So cities need to work. And cities are often the source of incredible innovation. And so that is why I'm absolutely thrilled to have a conversation this morning with the incredible force of Mayor Aki-Sawyerr of Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, and also the co-chair of C40. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then also joining me, I just have to give the shout out for Canada again.
We're from Canada. Canada. We do it
One
right.
more time. Mayor David Miller, two-term mayor of the fabulous, wonderful city of Toronto and managing director of C40. Thank you again for your time today. So delighted to have you both here.
Thank you.
So running a city, I think we can all agree, takes compassion, it takes commitment, it takes grit. And so the first piece I want to talk about is really directed to you, Mayor Aki, is around how do you use something like digital transformation, digital enablement, to really expand access to services to people who really need it most?
Thanks a lot, Jody. So I think we have several examples of this, but I'm going to start with one which might be a bit of a shock for everybody. When I first became mayor in May 2018, I walked into the city council, I walked into my new office, and there was no internet. I thought that would shock you.
1 million people.
Yes. So when you begin to talk about services, we can go right down to the basics. And for me, the most important thing then was, where do you get the revenue from to be able to deliver the services? When I campaigned on a climate change ticket, but one of the things I did say to residents was I would raise taxes. I don't think they believed me, which is why they voted me in. And I think also when they knew what I didn't know, because when I got into the city council and I asked for the property rate database, I was given a book. So they knew they weren't paying taxes, so how was I going to raise it? Digital transformation, what do? We moved from a paper-based system, of course, to a digital one. We did brainstorming around through a series of technical planning labs, which we're doing for all of our different sectors under our development program, which was called #TransformFreetown. And in respect of this particular aspect, took a satellite image of the city, did rooftop measurements from that, did ground truthing of different features from the property, took about 8 months, built an algorithm, and I can tell you that we moved from a manual system which had 37,000 properties to now a fully digital system with 130,000 properties. And we were able to increase our revenue potential more than 7-fold.
Absolutely incredible. And I'm sure that was a piece of cake. What would you say were the biggest challenges moving through that time?
I think the first thing, interestingly, the buy-in of the staff at council was challenging because property rates was an opaque, unclear system with no transparency and accountability. Bringing in a system like this means that every property is clearly, the property rate, it's not subjective. It is calculated by the system. Payments are not by hand. They can't be negotiated. It's paid through the banking system. So the biggest challenge initially was the rejection from the staff of that system for reasons you can imagine. The next challenge actually came, interestingly, from central government. Once everything had been rolled out and we started the first week of collection, the government put out an announcement on TV, on radio, with a press release that we were not to collect property rates. And I think that was politics, but we got past that. So maybe now, from a technical perspective, I would say this is a very good example of how digital transformations are possible and how much of a difference they can make. I would say the benefits outweigh any challenge that we had, and really would recommend it. We got lots of sort of visibility on that, got featured in The Economist for this, got notes written by different DFIs, and the sweetest part of it all is that this same system, the World Bank, is now funding its rollout into all the other cities in Sierra Leone.
Hear, hear. That's absolutely incredible. So, Mayor Miller, when we think a little bit about what might have resonated during your time as mayor, going back now to 2003, 2010. The world is a bit of a different place than it is today, than it was back then. What are the sort of things that you were prioritizing back then? And do you think that they have significantly changed? Have they stayed the same? What is your point of view on that?
I think the big picture issues have stayed the same. They're hitting differently, but they're the same in Freetown as they are in Toronto. And I do, parenthetically, I just have to mention why cities matter from my perspective. You know, most of the people in the world live in cities, but that's a new phenomena. It's since about 2008. Before that, we were predominantly a rural world. And cities have existed for 10,000 years, way before countries. They outlast countries. In many ways, they're more democratic than countries. So they're really an important force. And the issues, you know, we faced between 2003 and 2010 were transportation, climate change, democratic accessibility. And what I mean by that is, how do you engage people in neighborhoods who don't have very much political power to ensure their voice is heard so their needs are met? And Mayor Aki-Sawyerr does this brilliantly in Freetown. I'm sure if she gets a chance, I'm sure she'll mention it. And you know, and housing. So today, many of those issues are the same. Climate change is a huge existential threat for Toronto, just like anywhere else. You know, Toronto gets a 50 or 100-year flood several times a year now. And the investment required to fix the flooding is in the tens, if not hundreds of billions. And Toronto's tax revenue from rates is probably $5 billion. And that's true of many cities around the world. So what do we try to do to address these challenges? Well, the first is, if a city is going to be affordable in the North American context and grow and provide housing and job opportunities, it has to be built around the backbone of an excellent rapid transit system. So we planned and started the construction of 143 kilometers of light rail. As you know, because you're from Toronto, there were some political problems after I left, but eventually a lot of it will get opened. That's critical because that system was planned to go to low-income neighborhoods, because those people needed rapid transit the most, and it integrated them into the life of the city, and it also facilitated the development, and private sector development in particular, of affordable housing. And so those all connect, and of course they help reduce your carbon footprint. Those challenges are the same today, and we did use digital transformations. There was a moment in Toronto, the Transit Commission is called the Toronto Transit Commission. We developed an app so that people could put in their stop number and know when the next bus was coming. It was called Next Bus. And we held a press conference and announced it. And at the press conference, we also had open data, and this was very important. We opened up cities' data, including the TTCs. And at the press conference, the reporter came up to me and said, "Is this your app?" And I looked at it and I said, "No, that's not our app." And somebody, we'd released the data the night before, had developed privately an app that was better than ours, which is a bit embarrassing because ours was a considerable investment of public funds, because we had open data. Yeah. And that at the time was cutting edge. But in a lot of cities in North America, open data policies have led to incredible transformational change because individuals and companies use it to create responses to the needs of residents.
So I want to pick up on, by the way, when you are waiting for a bus and it is -40, as I have, that app will matter. You want to know when the bus is coming. I love your comment around democratic accessibility. So I think, Mayor Aki, if I talk about transit and the incredible work that you have done through the cable car system, can you tell us a little bit about how that act alone really just helped to deliver so much more accessibility to folks that needed it in Freetown?
Thanks. So we've never had a mass transit system, mass public transport system. So public transport, but having said that, 80% of people do not have cars. So the public transport system exists, but it's not for mass transit. It's low occupancy vehicles, and they're high polluters. So you've got the kekes, which are, you probably know as tuk-tuks, the three-wheelers. We have the two-wheelers, which are called okadas, and then we have the minibuses. And very recently, we've also now had through the government about 50 buses, which are meant to be part of a BRT. But the BRT is still using the same road as everybody, so it's not really moving quite as fast. So we've had that from the perspective of C40. Each C40 city is obligated, as part of our membership criteria, to have a climate action plan, which is based on the data in your city. So you must actually do the studies to understand where your emissions are coming from. So we knew that 28% of our emissions were coming from transport. So you have a combination of traffic jams, slow traffic, high pollutants, which aren't contributing in any kind of way to the global crisis in terms of emissions, but significantly impact health of locals, of our residents. And then, of course, you've got lack of inclusivity and lack of connectivity for informal settlements on the mountainsides. So with all of this together, and just this thing about being participatory, we have kind of an open door policy at the City Hall. When I came into office, the first thing we did, one of the first things we did, was to engage 15,000 of our residents in focus groups to understand what people were thinking and what people wanted as we developed Transform Freetown. That then went from meeting people at community to then putting a call out for professionals to say, these are our 4 clusters, these are 11 private sectors. If you have knowledge, you're interested, you're an expert, please come and talk to us. And somebody walked into our office and said, you should do a cable car. Sounded like a good idea, didn't know anything about it, but fortuitously, a few months later, I was in Durban and met with the former mayor of Medellin, the first mayor to introduce the cable car as a mass transit system. We sat down with a tissue paper, which I should have kept, but I have a picture of it, and he drew out the lines and explained to me what he did. And cut a long story short, my team went to Medellin. They did a collaboration. They've worked together the last 2 years. Our feasibility study was paid for by C40 Cities finance facility. And for those who are thinking, where do you invest money that makes a difference? C40. The feasibility study was paid for, and in the week 7th to the 11th of October, I am so thrilled to tell you that we will have our final mission. The feasibility study is completed. We will have the major manufacturing firms for cable cars, Poma and Doppelmayr, in Freetown, along with potential financiers, and we will be transforming our transport system. The first line, we designed 3 lines. When the 3 lines are in, we will cut travel time across the city from 2 hours to 15 minutes. That is going to...
That is seriously life-changing.
That is seriously life-changing, and it's going to connect. It's going to connect the university. It's going to connect communities on the hills. It's going to increase economic productivity. It's going to be woman gender friendly because we specifically spoke to our women. Many women are assaulted on public transport, and many women have to leave home early in the morning because 60% of our women in our city are market traders. So we have every 4 cars is a car for market women for their goods. So we have a great opportunity. We need to finance it. The private sector is required to come on board because of our economic situation. I come from a country which has massive potential that is yet to be fully realized, and consequently our GDP is far smaller than it needs to be. But that's just the reality I have to live with for now. We will change it. We will get there. But for now, it means that we have access to concessional financing and need grant financing as well. But the private sector has a space. The feasibility shows that this is economically viable. It's good business sense as well as being great for the environment.
That is, it's so incredibly inspiring. Please, yes. Mayor Miller, when we talk about what constitutes a livable city, certainly we talk about accessibility. The story that here is just so inspiring today. What would you say constitutes a livable city, and what role do you think private sector can play to really help move that along?
Well, for me, a livable city is a city that you can live in and have your daily needs met for education, for recreation, for work, without being forced to own a car. And that's true of New York. I've virtually worn these shoes out this week. I don't know about anybody else. And if you think that way, there's a whole bunch of ramifications, because a livable city has to be inclusive. It has to be livable for everyone. And that's really the course question, right? Livable for who? And a city where you don't have to own a car economically is much fairer, because cars are really expensive. And they exclude, if you're a car-dependent society, it can be very exclusive for some people who are on the margins economically. So that's really important, livability. The second is green spaces. Our city of Toronto, did I mention it's in Canada? Our city of Toronto is blessed with 3 wonderful river valleys running through the middle of it, ravines. So we have, and there's coyotes and foxes and all sorts of wildlife. Yes, they're raccoons. That's a separate topic. I didn't solve that when I was mayor. Many other things I did. But we're blessed with publicly accessible great parks and ravines, many parts of which are essentially wild or wilder. And that's really important for all sorts of reasons, including air quality, health, mental health of people. A livable city to me is denser. So it's more affordable and economically vital. The great Jane Jacobs, who came from New York but came to Toronto and saved us, she speaks about how vital neighborhoods are if people live and work in the same neighborhood, because small businesses can succeed. So I think you take those elements, and what do you have? You also have a city that's really climate friendly. And it's one of the geniuses of C40 membership requirement, having a climate plan that does your share of halving emissions by 2030 on a path to net zero by 2050, which is what science shows we have to do. It's only 6 years till 2050. So where's the private sector role in all of that? Well, think about Mastercard, since we're here. When I was in office, we went to an open payment systems at the Toronto Transit Commission and said anybody can use their credit cards. This was 2009. Unfortunately, after I left office, the provincial government canceled that and forced people to use a purpose-built card. But having the ability to access simply changes people's connection with transit. It becomes a much more convenient thing to use easily and simply. Private sector in the Canadian context is responsible for most of the housing. Some's publicly owned and developed, mostly private sector. So there's huge roles for private capital, private leadership in helping build that kind of dense, livable, relatively supportive of equality kind of city.
100%, and taking the learnings from, say, Freetown and bringing them to Toronto, or vice versa, and the ability to sort of transfer that knowledge is also incredibly important.
We can learn a lot from Freetown. And, sometimes in North America we think, we're going to go to these places and show them what to do. It's absolutely the other way around. As
Agreed.
We heard from Mayor Aki-Sawyerr this morning.
Just so inspiring. We are very quickly running out of time, and we probably could have chatted for easily another hour here this morning with the incredible experience from you both. I just want to quickly part by saying thank you Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for spending some time with us this morning. Such incredible stories. I think we will take a lot from this conversation. We spoke about the importance of action in the conversations that we have during this important time together, and we really couldn't thank you both enough for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.